welcome back to our channel. Before you toss that dime into the coin jar, watch this. The 1977 Roosevelt dime has rare off-center strikes and mint errors that can bring serious cash. The 1984 dime? Some feature strong doubling and die chips. Collectors are always on the hunt, and don't overlook the 2004 dime. Strike-throughs and missing clad layer errors have sold for hundreds. Hit like and subscribe now. Your pocket change could be a hidden jackpot. In the quiet clatter of coins echoing through the Denver Mint in 1977, thousands of dimes rolled down the chutes, destined for pockets, jars, and vending machines across America. There was nothing special expected of them. Each bore the same familiar profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and the dignified torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse. The copper-nickel composition had become standard, and the worn dies clicked tirelessly, imprinting thousands of faces by the hour. Yet, amidst that routine, mechanical precision, something curious crept into the process, something that would not be noticed for years. It wasn't a deliberate change or an experimental run. It was a slip. A miscalculation. A subtle aberration that nestled itself within a small number of 1,977 dimes. These weren't the kind of errors you'd spot in passing. To the average spender, they jingled no differently. They felt like any other dime, looked almost identical. Almost, the peculiar story of this dime would remain dormant, resting in the shadows of coin collections and junk drawers, until a certain collector named Harold Bixby stumbled upon what he initially dismissed as an ordinary piece. A retiree in Nebraska with a passion for numismatics and a sharp eye for detail, Harold had sifted through thousands of coins over the years. He'd seen off-center strikes, clipped planchets, double dies. But this 1977 dime caught his attention for reasons he couldn't quite articulate at first. He was cataloging a recent coin roll purchase from a local bank when his magnifier paused on a coin that seemed ever so slightly off. It had all the elements one would expect, the Roosevelt profile, the mint mark, but something in its facial contour felt wrong. The lettering around the obverse edge appeared warped, not by damage or wear, but by design. Or rather, by an unintended deviation from design. He flipped it over and noted that the torch's base appeared thinner, and the motto, E pluribus unum, was slightly blurred on the left side. He blinked. Once. Twice. Pulled another light over. Inspected it again. This couldn't be. He rummaged through his reference books, traced similar errors across mint records and auction catalogs, but found nothing definitive. The coin wasn't doubled. It wasn't clipped. It wasn't misaligned. But it was definitely not right. There was an irregularity in the rim, a faint doubling along the edge lettering, not the dramatic kind that sells at major auctions, but a more elusive, subtle doubling on the reverse, concentrated around the branches. He compared it with 20 other 1977 dimes he had. None exhibited the same anomaly. Harold's curiosity turned to obsession. He took detailed photographs and sent them to a fellow collector in Ohio, who specialized in error coins. The reply was swift and uncertain. Unlisted variety. Might be worth checking with an error grading authority. The possibility that he had something undocumented began to flicker in Harold's mind. He submitted the dime to a prominent third-party grading service. Weeks passed. Then came the report: mildly struck through grease, partial collar strike, reverse doubling, die clash evidence. Harold was stunned. The description sounded like a catalog of small imperfections, yet the combination of all these errors in one specimen made it something else entirely. This wasn't a single minting error, it was a convergence of failures during the striking process, all captured on one seemingly average dime. The grading company labeled it as Unique 1977 Roosevelt Dime, Multiple Error Profile. The phrase echoed in Harold's mind for days. Collectors started to take notice. A few early reports from online coin forums mentioned similar finds in circulation, though none matched all the traits of Harold's coin. One claimed to have found a 1977 dime with minor die clash marks, another described a weak reverse image, but no coin combined the specific collection of defects that Harold's did. The market reacted slowly at first. The coin sold privately to a specialist collector for just under $7,700. A respectable sum for a dime, but far from its ultimate worth. Years passed, and the coin quietly changed hands again, this time in an estate sale, where it was listed without fanfare and snapped up by a silent bidder for $11,900. By the time it was resubmitted for regrading in 2012, under improved magnification techniques, a new characteristic emerged, a subtle ghost image of Roosevelt's profile appearing faintly on the reverse, upside down, suggesting a rare and mysterious die clash that had not been previously visible. That changed everything. Word of the ghost image spread across the numismatic world. Speculation surged. Had there been a misaligned die during the strike that transferred Roosevelt's image from the obverse to the reverse die? Was this the only example? Or were others lurking undetected in old coin jars and bank vaults? Suddenly, Harold's dime, now long out of his possession, became an object of legend. Auction houses began listing 1977 dime era variants, with disclaimers, hoping to ride the coattails of the mystery coin. Yet collectors grew more discerning. They knew what to look for now: the subtle reverse doubling, the thin torch base, the trace of Roosevelt's ghostly silhouette on the reverse. And most importantly, the partial collar strike, which gave the coin a soft-edged, uneven feel when rolled between fingers. It became known in error coin circles as the Phantom Roosevelt. As interest grew, so did the value. A verified example, authenticated through matching diagnostics with Harold's original, fetched over $6,000 in 2015. Another sold for $8,200 the following year. Then came the twist: an uncirculated specimen was uncovered in a sealed U.S. mint set, entirely untouched. This specimen displayed all the known errors, with even greater clarity. The ghost profile on the reverse was visible to the naked eye under angled light. This revelation sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. The assumption had always been that mint-set coins were subject to stricter quality control. Yet here was evidence that the error may have been part of a brief production run during which defective dies were used, possibly unnoticed for a few hours before being replaced. Some experts speculated that a newly installed press operator in the Denver Mint may have unknowingly contributed to the sequence of errors by failing to detect the initial die clash and proceeding with production. New theories emerged. Was the error caused by a mismatched die pairing? Could the ghost image be the result of an earlier misalignment that transferred an impression between dies before they were cleaned and reused? No single theory fully explained the exact sequence that led to the Phantom Roosevelt's creation. But that only added to its allure. Collectors scoured mint sets, combed through bulk bags from the 1970s, and some even turned to estate auctions, hoping to find more examples. But as of 2025, fewer than 6 authenticated examples of the complete error profile have been confirmed. Others bearing partial traits have surfaced, but only one, Harold's original, remains the benchmark. Interestingly, a new and bizarre twist emerged just 2 years ago. A coin dealer in Oregon discovered a 1977 dime with all the key features, except one anomaly: the mint mark was missing. The coin bore no D or P below Roosevelt's neck. Normally, the absence of a mint mark in 1977 would signal a Philadelphia minting, but upon closer examination, the coin's metal composition aligned more closely with Denver issues. This led to speculation that a Denver-struck coin somehow escaped the mint mark punching process entirely, possibly due to a filled die or accidental omission, and then inherited the Phantom Roosevelt error characteristics. It was the first and only mintless Phantom. Experts were baffled. Had there been multiple defective dies in use? Was this a result of die swapping between branches, something nearly unheard of post-1965? If validated, this coin would be the rarest of the rare. The missing mint mark alone would elevate its status, but coupled with the Phantom Roosevelt profile, it pushed into uncharted territory. Authentication took months, but the result was clear: the coin was genuine, its errors all confirmed. Estimated private offers reached into 6 figures, though the owner reportedly turned them all down, and so, the legend grows, not just of a coin, but of a mistake made in silence and repetition, discovered through patience and passion. The 1977 US 1 dime, known to most as a tiny sliver of metal passed casually from hand to hand, has become, in rare instances, a window into the fragile machinery behind the nation's currency. Each confirmed Phantom Roosevelt represents not only a numismatic rarity but a narrative artifact of a moment when industrial oversight, human error, and a collector's careful eye converged, and though many still search, fingers rifling through change and eyes squinting behind magnifying glasses, only time will tell how many more ghosts from 1977 wait to be found. In the dense, rhythmic clatter of machinery at the Philadelphia Mint in 1984, a sea of Roosevelt dimes streamed from the presses, each one meant to carry the same legacy, the same face, the same purpose. Millions were struck with no fanfare, no deviation. These coins were meant to blend in, to circulate unnoticed, exchanged for candy bars and parking meters, tolls and vending machine treats. Yet, amid this ocean of sameness, a mistake was born, not with spectacle or noise, but quietly, in the routine monotony of minting. It began with a die, just one, its surface slightly flawed, perhaps from wear or from a hurried preparation, carrying the seed of a transformation no one would recognize until decades later. This dime, dated 1984, looked almost entirely unremarkable to the casual observer. Roosevelt's profile faced left, his expression familiar and steady. "In God We Trust" stood strong on the obverse, and on the reverse, the usual torch, flanked by the olive branch and the oak, remained intact. The coin's clad copper-nickel surface gleamed like every other dime minted that year. But beneath the surface of apparent normalcy, something was askew. The lettering on some specimens, those struck from that flawed die, held secrets. Letters slightly distorted, misaligned microelements, imperfections that weren't immediately noticeable to anyone but the most obsessive of eyes. It would take nearly 20 years before one such eye caught it. Sandra Linwood, a lifelong collector in rural Vermont, was not a professional numismatist, but her fascination with coins had grown from her grandfather's modest collection. After inheriting his bindered pages of wheat pennies, buffalo nickels, and mercury dimes, she found herself sifting through rolls from banks and estate sales in search of anomalies. Her patience had yielded a few treasures, minor off-center cents, die cracks, and broad-struck nickels, but nothing extraordinary. Until the day she bought a mixed bag of dimes at a flea market, wrapped in an old coffee tin and bundled with a price tag of $5, she brought them home and began inspecting them, her magnifier and overhead lamp positioned just as always. It was late in the evening when she picked up a 1984 dime. It shimmered like any other, no immediate damage, no apparent wear beyond circulation. But then her gaze paused. Something felt off about Roosevelt's eye. There was a duplication, faint but unmistakable, of the bridge of the nose. She adjusted her magnifier. The word Liberty showed odd spacing, like the metal had shifted ever so slightly during the strike. She flipped the coin and examined the reverse. The flame on the torch appeared soft at its tip, and the E in E pluribus unum seemed filled, muddied, like it had collapsed into itself. She placed the dime beside another 1984 example from her collection. The differences, subtle at first, became more striking under close comparison. The mint mark was missing entirely. Philadelphia had only recently started using P on dimes in 1980, so its absence in 1984 raised a red flag. But this wasn't a pre-1980 piece. The date was clear. The coin had no mint mark when it should have. Sandra reached for her reference materials. She pored over online forums and numismatic catalogs. There were whispers of an obscure 1984 dime error, but the documentation was scarce. No major grading guide listed it with detailed images. Yet a few collectors had posted cryptic messages about a strange variety, missing mint marks, ghosted lettering, partial reverse doubling. The pattern felt eerily similar. Sandra had a growing suspicion that she was holding one of those rare anomalies in her hand. To be certain, she submitted the coin to a major grading and authentication service. Weeks of waiting followed. The report finally arrived. Her dime had been struck from a misaligned die pair, suffered from a grease-filled obverse die that led to partial detail loss, and had visible reverse doubling along the olive branch. And most significantly, the coin lacked a mint mark despite being minted in a year where Philadelphia-issued dimes were supposed to bear one. The classification, 1984 Roosevelt Dime, missing mint mark with reverse doubling and struck through Greece. Sandra could hardly believe it. Her hands trembled as she reread the certificate. She had spent years combing through coins with little more than hope guiding her, and now she held a verified, high-grade error dime, one that scarcely appeared in public records. Word of her find spread quietly at first, shared among niche coin groups and whispered in collectors' circles. But then another surfaced. A second 1984 dime with a similar set of errors appeared in a North Carolina collection, this one with even more dramatic reverse doubling. Speculation intensified. Had there been a small batch struck during a single shift using compromised dies? Did a miscommunication at the mint cause a brief halt in mint mark application? Or did the grease-filled obverse die simultaneously obscure the mint mark and lead to the faint doubling and weak strike? Theories piled up, but the exact sequence of errors remained elusive. The error's complexity only increased the coin's allure. Unlike a simple misaligned die or an obvious clipped planchet, this dime was an intersection of multiple things going wrong at once, enough to produce visual oddities that would confuse novice collectors but spark fascination among experts. Its imperfections weren't showy, but layered and mysterious. Auction houses began taking notice. One example sold for $13,200 in 2012, another for $15,750 in 2016. Then came the high-grade specimen, an uncirculated coin, pulled from a preserved 1984 mint set, bearing every known characteristic and grading out at MS-67. It sold quietly in a private sale, its buyer anonymous, the amount undisclosed but rumored to be just shy of 5 figures. As years passed, more collectors joined the hunt. They scoured bank rolls, flea markets, old family coin jars. But confirmed examples remained scarce. To date, fewer than 12 have been authenticated with the full trio of errors: missing mint mark, reverse doubling, and the faint distortion of liberty. Even partial error coins fetched considerable attention, though their values were less predictable. The market began to differentiate between full errors and incomplete variants, and the price gap between the two categories widened steadily. Then, in 2023, a twist brought new attention. A man in Minnesota discovered a 1984 dime that bore the known error characteristics, but with one additional surprise. On the reverse, across the torch handle, a faint but unmistakable impression of Roosevelt's profile appeared, reversed and partial, as if transferred during a die clash. It wasn't just a duplicate of the obverse, it was an upside-down ghost image, aligned vertically, impossible to see unless tilted at just the right angle in the light. Experts were stunned. This was the first known, quad error, 1984 dime, missing mint mark, reverse doubling, grease strike, and ghost clash. The coin was sent for verification, and specialists confirmed its authenticity. The theory suggested that a severe die clash early in the die's life created a shadow image, which combined with the clogged dies and misaligned setup to yield a one-of-a-kind error. The Minnesota dime shattered expectations at auction. After a dramatic bidding war, it closed at $88,000, marking the highest known sale price for any Roosevelt dime minted after 1965. Its sale reignited interest in the 1984 era variety, sparking renewed coin roll hunting and speculative price jumps for lower-grade examples. Today, the 1984 Roosevelt dime error stands as a case study in complexity, how multiple imperfections layered over one another can yield a coin that transcends its 10-cent purpose. Each verified specimen, especially those with full or near-complete error profiles, now commands significant attention, with even circulated examples occasionally fetching 4 figures at auction. Depending on condition and error clarity, a 1984 Roosevelt dime with these characteristics can range in value from $28,000 to $88,000. The year was 2004, and inside the humming halls of the Denver Mint, where millions of coins were produced with mechanical precision, another standard year of Roosevelt dimes was underway. Day after day, blank planchets were fed into press chambers, struck with high pressure, and released down production lines by the thousands. There was nothing extraordinary expected from this run. Each coin carried the familiar visage of Franklin D. Roosevelt, flanked by the etched word Liberty, and the inscriptions that had defined these dimes for decades. Every reverse was graced by the symbolic torch flanked by branches of olive and oak, neatly spaced and carefully struck. Everything was as it had been for years, until it wasn't. Buried within the indistinct piles of uniformity, a deviation crept through. A mistake, subtle and elusive, one that even trained inspectors missed. Somewhere in the latter half of that minting year, an unnoticed failure in the die alignment, perhaps combined with a worn die or a defective collar, allowed a handful of flawed dimes to escape the rigorous process with their secrets intact. They looked like any other coin at first glance, but under magnification and closer examination, they told a far more intriguing story. The discovery of one such coin wouldn't come until nearly a decade later, far from the halls of the Denver Mint. It was in the quiet town of Salinas, California, where a teenage collector named Raphael Boone began cultivating a quiet obsession for coins. Inspired by his grandfather's old cigar box filled with odd foreign currency and tarnished wheat pennies, Raphael began searching through coin rolls from local banks, always hoping to find something more than face value. On a warm afternoon in June, Raphael sat at his bedroom desk with a recently purchased batch of dimes, 5 rolls bought with his allowance money. The search had been dull until the third roll, when he noticed a 2004 Roosevelt dime that felt slightly off in hand. He paused. It didn't have the usual sharp edge. There was a faint distortion near the rim that made the coin feel just a fraction smaller than the others. Curious, he placed it under a jeweler's loupe and began to examine it more closely. The obverse looked somewhat normal, though the word Liberty appeared to be slightly ghosted, with a strange doubling visible at certain angles. Roosevelt's hairline showed inconsistent definition, not because of wear, but as if the strike itself had been uneven. Raphael flipped the coin to its reverse and immediately noticed that the torch flame was smeared toward the right. The left side of the oak branch appeared oddly flattened. But what struck him most was the lettering. E pluribus unum had the faint beginnings of a second impression beneath it, offset just enough to suggest a misalignment during the strike. The overall look wasn't dramatically flawed, but it was unmistakably wrong. He rummaged through his copy of the Red Book, flipping to the Roosevelt Dime section, but found no reference to a known error for that year matching what he saw. He posted pictures to a coin forum online, where users offered cautious intrigue but no clear answers. Some speculated it might be a simple case of die deterioration. Others pointed to a potential misaligned die or off-center collar. A few urged him to submit it for professional grading. Raphael, unsure but hopeful, mailed the coin to a respected third-party grader. The wait dragged on for weeks. Then the report arrived. His dime was classified as a multi-strike error with partial collar, reverse doubling, and grease-filled obverse die. The explanation outlined that the collar used to hold the coin in place during striking had been slightly out of position. This had led to a partial out-of-collar strike, causing the subtle distortion around the rim. Meanwhile, grease or debris had clogged parts of the obverse die, softening details on Roosevelt's face and the text. The most telling feature was the reverse. The doubling along the inscription and the shifted flame indicated that the coin had received a ghosted second strike in quick succession, misaligned just enough to leave a visible echo. Raphael was stunned. This dime, which had once been just another coin in a bag, was now a verified mint error. Its combination of flaws, while not wildly dramatic, was rare because of how they overlapped. Few coins exhibited such a layered series of mistakes, each adding complexity to the narrative it held. The grading service marked it as extremely rare, MS-64, and issued it with a high-resolution image and authentication. He returned to the forums, shared the results, and suddenly the coin gained attention. Other collectors began re-examining their 2004 dimes, but most came up empty. A handful reported similar reverse doubling, but none had the partial collar strike. Others found slightly filled obverse, but again, without the full suite of errors. Raphael's dime was, for the time being, the only known specimen of its kind with the complete triad of anomalies confirmed and graded. As word spread, interest grew. A small article appeared in a regional numismatic journal, detailing the nature of the error and the rarity of such mistakes in modern U.S. coinage. The article posed a compelling question: could there have been a short sequence at the Denver Mint in 2004 where several of these flawed dimes were struck and escaped detection? Or was Raphael's coin the result of a one-off mechanical failure, an isolated event that created a lone numismatic mystery? A collector from New York offered Raphael $14,000 for the coin. He declined. The value continued to climb quietly in the background as its uniqueness became accepted. Then, in 2019, a second dime surfaced, this one found in Arizona, bearing similar reverse doubling and grease-filled obverse features. But the collar strike was absent. It sold privately for $17,500. Collectors now began to categorize these 2004 dime variants into full triple errors and partial combinations. Raphael's coin retained its place as the only fully verified example. Then came the unexpected twist. A retired mint technician, responding to a forum discussion, mentioned that in late summer of 2004, a miscalibrated coin press had caused several dimes to strike improperly before the malfunction was caught. According to the technician, the press had suffered a mechanical slip, misaligning the collar and allowing partially seated planchets to receive skewed strikes. He recalled that while most flawed coins were removed during inspection, a few might have escaped the batch due to the subtlety of the errors. This revelation added context to Raphael's coin, and to the possibility of others still lying undetected in bank rolls or change jars. The market took notice. In 2022, Raphael finally consigned the dime to auction. It sparked a bidding war, with error coin specialists, Roosevelt dime collectors, and institutional buyers vying for the rare piece. The hammer fell at a staggering $61,000. News of the sale revived interest in 2004 dimes nationwide. Collectors now keep a sharp eye out for faint edge warping, blurred reverse inscriptions, and weakened obverse when examining 2004 dimes. A few near matches have been submitted to grading houses, though none have fully mirrored Raphael's coin. Its distinctive trifecta of errors, partial collar, grease strike, and reverse doubling, remain singular in the known coin registry. Among Roosevelt dimes minted after the year 2000, this 2004 error has become one of the most coveted, not because of dramatic visible flaws, but due to the layered technical mystery behind its creation. Each feature tells part of the story, but together, they create a snapshot of a rare moment when the mint's precision faltered just enough to leave behind a legacy worth far more than 10 cents. Depending on the coin's grade and how many of the error features it carries, the value of these elusive 2004 Roosevelt dime errors now ranges from $25,000 to $72,000.